Mataji, today is her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thanks. That's why we made cake.
Oh, good. Very nice. I think I've said this once before. Everybody likes cake, right? So I was explaining, maybe last year, we were discussing at a board meeting in San Diego, this is about 20 years ago, that we're always having challah at the Sunday feast, and we were thinking we should maybe change things around a little bit and have some cake sometime. What do you think about that? Good idea? So we were suggesting that, and we decided, yeah, cake or something, but not challah every week. Week after week after week. So we were getting a new menu together for Sunday feast. Is everyone's phone off? So Trivita Prabhu heard that we were gonna have other sweets other than halva sometimes. You know Trivita? Has he come here? Trivita is one of the main editors for the BBT. He's a Sanskrit scholar, and he does all the Sanskrit editing, and he's working on the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, all the new editions and so on. So he found out that we're going to have cake sometimes instead of halva. He became really upset. And he barged into the board meeting. He said, I heard what you're going to do. You have to have halva. You have to have halva. So we said, well, why do we have to have halva? Everybody likes other things also. He said, no, you have to have halva. You can make whatever else you want, but you have to have halva. I did that once. We were traveling on a motorhome. We didn't have a way to make cake. So how did we do it? Oh yeah, we needed to have cake. So we had no way to make cake, so we made halva. We made a real thick. We put icing on. That's another story. So we said, well, Trivita Prabhu, we don't see any problem not having halva sometimes. He said, you have to have halva. So we said, well, why do we have to have halva? And he's normally a very reasonable devotee. He said, I became a devotee because of halva. He said, I used to go to the Sunday feast in the Brooklyn Temple every week just for the halva. It's the only reason I went. And I'd take a week's worth of halva home with me. And I'd eat it after 2 days. So you have to have halva. Please. So, cake is good too. Do you have halva tonight? If not, I won't tell Juvita.
I'll make one.
No, I won't tell Juvita. It'll be okay. So, it's very nice to be here. Try Radhamadava? Okay. Any key? Is that right? That's good. Okay, Mridanga ready? Tablas ready? Okay, follow the Mridanga, okay? Listen to the Mridanga. What else? Can't.
No.
My hands aren't good enough yet. They're not working. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Kunja Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. I think you should learn Mridanga. Do you like the Mridanga? Because that way you can, because with the tabla you're all over the place.
No.
Because you don't have a specific way to play it.
Yeah, I'm doing it specifically.
Hmm?
I'm doing it specifically. I'm doing it specifically.
Specifically he's doing.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, during kirtan, there's a certain way to play, and there's a certain way that devotees learn mridanga. And the mridanga is the traditional kirtan instrument. I'm sorry to, I hope I'm not offending anybody. Your parents, where are your parents? Who are the parents?
No, actually he doesn't know, but even tabla can also be used for kirtan.
It can, but someone has to teach him how to do it.
Yeah, that's
And there aren't really,
yeah.
so if,
Maybe after some time he learns. This time we are going to India, maybe he'll pick that.
yeah,
He
'cause
doesn't know. Otherwise it can also be coordinated.
it could,
Yeah, but he doesn't
but it's
know.
not being, that's
He
the
doesn't
thing.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if he plays mridanga, these devotees know they can help him,
Yeah.
and it'll sound very nice.
Yeah.
Actually,
he
he's
He
inclined
has
to.
asked for one.
Yeah,
He's inclined to. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, we should give him.
Yeah, he has asked.
I'll next time.
yeah, well, because all the kids learn how to play mridanga, and then after he plays mridanga, then tabla he'll be able to understand how to play the tabla along with the mridanga beats. Just like if anybody plays the djembe, first it's not an easy instrument to play, but they should at least know how to play mridanga before they pick up the djembe and start. Bam, bam. I don't know if you've seen any enthusiastic djembe players change the mood of the kirtan, but that's what happens sometimes. And the mood of the kirtan is very important for everyone, and the music is the foundation for the chanting. And he has good rhythm, and you'll be a star mridanga player.
Yeah.
It's true. Actually, the mridanga came before the tablas, and then I don't know the details, but the mridanga came first, and there are devotees. Sometimes if a mridanga isn't tuned well on the big head,
Why?
So they'll play the small head on one mridanga, and then they'll take they'll take the big head on one mridanga, and then they'll put the other mridanga up like that,
Yeah.
and play like that. It's like tablas, but like mridanga. So, you seen that?
Yes, Maharaji.
Yeah.
And these boys do that. You can do that? It's pretty fancy. So, I like to play percussion. So, but my hands are bad. I can't. So I'm envious of anyone who does.
It doesn't matter if your hands are like that.
Oh, I wish it didn't. What do you mean?
It doesn't matter.
No, I'm okay. I mean,
Yeah, you're okay.
yeah. You mean I can play?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I tried that. Didn't work so
No,
well.
no. Mridangam is just separated to tabla.
Hmm?
No. It's just separated to tabla.
Right, right.
That's
So,
all the difference.
okay. Yeah, exactly. So if you learn how to play mridanga, then you'll be able to play that really good. What do you like better?
They're probably the same, so
Okay.
I don't know. Hard to
Okay. It's all nectar, right?
decide.
It's all good. Okay. So that was our kirtan class. I'm on the GBC committee called the Kirtan Standards Committee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we're dealing with a lot of nice issues, actually. Okay, so how many of you were here last weekend when we were reading from the Bhagavad Gita? Okay, so maybe okay. I'd like to read from it again and speak a little bit before, so that we can get a little more oriented. Have more of an understanding of the book. Let's see. What was the page?
26.
18? Okay. 18. Okay, so since most of you haven't seen the Vena Gita, remember I first started reading it, I was visiting Shiva Ramswamy in Hungary, and the Vena Gita had just come out. I went to his farm. He has a beautiful farm there, in Vrajadal. Excuse me. And the book had just come out. Beautiful, beautiful edition. It's the 21st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's described in great detail, as he'll explain here. And I was so happy to have that book and start reading it, that I took 2 boxes back with me to the States, and I distributed, there were 20 books in each box. I distributed 20 books in Houston and 20 books here in Dallas. I don't know who has them. And then we wanted to translate it into Spanish. So the devotee by the name of Javi Prabhupada II, he's from Venezuela. He was very excited about the book. So recently he paid for it to be translated in Spanish. And he sent down the English PDF file for the devotee to translate. And I was given permission to have this PDF file. So I have it with me. It's always nice to have a book. I'm not sure who has it in Dallas, if you know anyone that does, I'd like to read it. So here's the PDF file. I was so excited about the book because, well, he'll explain. I'll read a little bit from the, I think it's the introduction, yes. It explains a little bit why he wrote this book and how he wrote this book. He says, for members of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada is the first, last, and foremost authority on any subject. When considering writing on Krishna's pastimes, I immediately turned to Krishna book as the main source material. When comparing the original verses of the BBT version of Srimad Bhagavatam to Srila Prabhupada's summary study, which is the Krishna book, 10th canto, there are obvious differences. In other words, Prabhupada wasn't just paraphrasing the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there were differences there. To be more specific, there was greater content in Prabhupada's Krishna book than Sukadeva Goswami's verses. Some of this was obviously Prabhupada's explanations, but there was additional subject matter from some yet unidentified source. I surmised it was the commentaries of the previous acharyas. To get to the root of the issue, I asked Vinod Bihari Prabhu, a teacher of Sanskrit at the Vrindavan Gurukul, to read me some commentaries of the acharyas. When he did, I became amazed at the intricate network that Srila Prabhupada had woven with three ingredients: Sukadeva Goswami's texts, the purports of the acharyas, and his own explanations. In all cases, as is characteristic of his divine grace, he presented the essentials of both the text and its commentaries in simple, innocent English, something easily understood by all. It was remarkable. The more I read, the more I was amazed at Srila Prabhupada's genius. So, then he says, a spontaneous reaction to the paragraph above may be to question that if Srila Prabhupada's presentation was so complete, why should I, an insignificant creature, write more? In response, I take shelter of a highly qualified author's reply to this valid inquiry. When explaining the need to elaborate on the source material of his book, this highly qualified author, whose name was Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote, I'll read that again. When explaining the need to elaborate on the source material of his book, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote, Swarup Damodar, it's of his book. Oh, I guess he's talking about Srila, yes, Swarup Damodar. We'll see. Swarup Damodar wrote short codes, whereas Raghunath Das Goswami wrote elaborate descriptions. Okay, so this is what Srila Krishnadas Goswami said. Kaviraj Goswami. Swarup Damodar wrote short codes. This is like his diary, pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Whereas Raghunath Das Goswami wrote elaborate descriptions, his diary. I shall now describe Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities more elaborately, as if fluffing out compressed cotton. So that's the quote from Krishnadas Kaviraj. And that, and what ensued was the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj actually was present when Raghunath Das Goswami was speaking. He would speak for hours every day for decades, 40-something years in Radhakund, he would speak on the Lord Chaitanya from his own experience, serving, assisting in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and basically that, and whatever, as he's explaining here, the codes of Swarup Damodar, and the diary of Raghunath Das Goswami, and what he heard from Raghunath Das Goswami. So he fluffed it out. And so Srila Shivaram Swami is continuing. Acharyas such as Sanatana Goswami have written interesting and elaborate commentaries on the words of Sukadeva Goswami. While maintaining the mood and content of the verses, they have supplied additional information, further pastimes, and deep philosophical understandings. So they're commenting on Sukadeva Goswami's Srimad Bhagavatam. Appending the details of the Acharya's commentaries to Srila Prabhupada's summary study would be like fluffing out compressed cotton. The substance remains the same, but it occupies greater volume. I therefore decided to do just that, fluff out what Srila Prabhupada has written. So he used the commentaries of Shivaram Swami, he used the commentaries of Sridhar Swami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So he took, and Prabhupada's Krishna book, and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, Sukadeva Goswami. So Sukadeva Goswami, Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, Sridhar Swami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So you have all of their relevant commentaries, which he considered, Shivaram Swami considered relevant, and he put in the Venu Gita, all his descriptions of the 21st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So very, very sweet. So these pastimes, as we read last week, these pastimes, these descriptions, they're beautiful meditations. And we practice hearing attentively when we're engaged in this process of Shravana, so that we can become absorbed. And I saw this quote that I wrote down. I don't know if I can follow. Yeah, here it is. So this process of Shravanam is very, very potent. And just like when we read the Bhagavad Gita, we can read the same verse over and over again, day after day, week after week, year after year, and get new meaning from it. Because it can be understood on so many different levels. Superficial levels, deep levels, depending on our state of consciousness. And the more advanced we are, the more we could really penetrate into the meaning. And some days we might read the same verse and become really surcharged with enthusiasm or realization. Whereas previously we didn't. So I was reading a nice verse from that Dhanadhar Swami quoted in his book, The Ways of Devotion, just recently. And it has a lot to do with what we're discussing. He says, Srila Rupa Goswami says, the taste of rasa, rasa is when all the ecstatic emotions are combined, and that produces rasa. All the different types of ecstasies are churned together, that produces rasa. So therefore the rasa dance, because all the ecstasies of Krishna and the gopis are working, and their relationship is becoming sweeter and sweeter. So this is what Srila Rupa Goswami says. The taste of rasa is so astonishing that it always remains apurvata, unprecedented eternally fresh and new, as if being experienced for the very first time. I'll read that again. The taste of rasa is so astonishing that it always remains apurvata, which means unprecedented, eternally fresh and new, as if being experienced for the very first time. So, most of us, I think, will agree that we're not on that stage of rasa, where all the transcendental ecstasies are being fully manifested and we're living with Krishna in that way. But even so, even in the very beginning stages of devotional service, Shravanam, or hearing about Krishna's pastimes, properly, attentively, with devotion, is so potent that it's as if, and we've experienced this, it's new and fresh, and it's like we're experiencing it for the first time, if we're really hearing it, or just like the holy name. If we're really hearing it, we don't get bored because it's ever fresh. It's like it's a new thing, the sound vibration. We might think, well, now I've heard Krishna's name. This is the real Hare Krishna mantra. And then we might be on a more advanced level in the future, and then think, well, now I've really heard it. This is the Hare Krishna mantra. Ever fresh, ever new, ever blissful. So, even though it's not rasa, even though when we're hearing these pastimes, maybe we're not there in the same way that the gopis are there, or the cows are there, or the cowherd boys are there, but we can be there enough to experience a little bit of taste, just an infinitesimal taste, fraction of what
inconceivably minuscule fraction of what they're experiencing, and that is enough to want us have us want to keep reading more and more and more and hearing more and more. So, with that in mind, also I wanted to say something else, that when we read these pastimes, it's nice to understand what is going on a little bit of a deeper or more analytical level, so that we can appreciate it, just like Bhakta Mark did this beautiful painting. I have it on my desktop. So he explained to me how this painting came about, how he did it. Take like 1 minute and describe it, what you did.
Oh boy. Well, I took these colored pencils, in fact, it's not paint, but it's called painting, it's okay too, but colored pencils, and I created with the brown skin of Srila Prabhupada's flesh. In fact, I mixed many colors that you wouldn't think, but upon layering them over and over, in the end result, when you smudge them together, they actually make the hue of the skin tone. So it's very painstaking to start out with a purple, and you could make a weird looking Prabhupada if you're not careful. But I deciphered by studying at the picture, the original picture. I studied so closely, and you can see so many colors make up brown actually. In paintings, you see so many colors are reflected. So I went out as a gamble. I tried the purple, and then put in some pink, and then some other colors, different colors, and then finally you kind of smudge them all together, I came up with, it kind of looks brown. It's many different colors, but it's a layering process. That's the best way to explain it.
So now if you look at it again, you can see a little bit more. You can understand it a little more and appreciate it a little bit more, because you understand it. How do I get back where I was? No. What's the next number? 277. Okay. So, in the same way, in the Nectar of Devotion, the different ingredients of rasa are described. We can read the pastimes of Krishna, and it's very, very sweet. And if we understand a little bit more about the dynamics or what goes into those pastimes, it becomes even sweeter, more relishable. So these activities, we're going to read a little bit about the cows tonight. And these activities, what the cows are doing, what Krishna is doing, what the cowherd boys are doing, they're all expressions of ecstasy. They're not just doing what we do. Our movements are not expressions of ecstasy. Or taking it on the other end of the spectrum, for a materialist, everything they do is an expression of their sensual desires, their desire to be gratified. Every emotion that they experience, everything they do, everything they're thinking about, it's a manifestation of their material bhav, material emotions. So that's a perverted reflection of what's going on in the spiritual world, or on the spiritual realm, Bhoma Vrindavan, Vrindavan here, on the earth, or amongst the activities of pure devotees. Every movement is a manifestation of their ecstasy, or their bhavs. So, their spiritual emotions. So that's described nicely, and it's nice to think about it. For example, in the Nectar Devotion, it's described that first there's vibhav, it's like the stimulation for ecstatic love. And that can either be Krishna, Krishna's devotee, or something to do with Krishna. Those are called, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's Udipan, something that's in relationship to Krishna. Like Krishna's peacock feather, or Krishna's flute. These are stimulations for ecstatic love. Either Krishna himself, what is that, Allah, Banda, forget the Sanskrit. Krishna himself can be a stimulation for ecstatic love, or Krishna's devotee, or something to do with Krishna. Krishna's smile, Krishna's clothes, Krishna's footprints. So these are stimulations for ecstatic love, and so how is that ecstatic love expressed once our ecstatic love is stimulated? This is expressed in an activity. It's like Mother Yasoda. She sees Krishna, she's so attracted, so she'll want to embrace Krishna. Right? That's called anubhav. That follows the vibhav of being stimulated by seeing something or hearing something to do with Krishna. So then there's the anubhav. You do something, or Mother Yasoda will want to feed Krishna her breast milk. And then there's the sattvika bhav. That's another ecstasy. And that's like an involuntary ecstasy, like crying. The first one, the anubhav, is voluntary. You do it. Decide to do it. The sattvika bhav is involuntary. You start crying, goosebumps, laughing. So many different sattvika bhavs would be there. And then there's the vyabhichari bhav. And that bhav it's like it's described as a wave in the ocean that comes up, the ocean of ras. It comes up and then it goes down again, like something, or like when Krishna was in the coils of Kaliya, all of a sudden the devotees were experiencing great anxiety. It just came. Comes and it goes. Like that. It's vyabhichari bhav. Some intense emotion that manifests. And then there's the sthaya bhav. which is one's relationship with Krishna, the way one sees Krishna, the way one sees himself or herself in relationship to Krishna. Cowherd boy, gopi, mother, friend, like that. Sometimes that's called rasa. What's your rasa? But actually, rati is taste. Rati. That's the real word. And rasa comes about when all these elements are combined. Like you think of yourself in relationship as a cowherd boy, let's say, in relationship to Krishna. And as a cowherd boy, everything you see Krishna do, or that's in relationship to Krishna. The vibhav, the cowherd boys, they have their vibhavs, their stimuluses, they have their anubhavs, the things they do. They have their sattvika bhavs, the way the emotions, involuntary emotions they feel. They have their vyabhichari bhavs, like when, let's see, who can give an example of that? Some intense emotion a cowherd boy would feel when Krishna was, well, the coils of Kaliya, everybody was in so much, yes.
When there was this cowherd boy who made something for Krishna, but he was going to leave for Mathura that day, so he had intense emotion.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Yeah. So, yes.
Also Bakasura when he was eating Krishna.
Yeah.
All the cowherd boys.
Okay, great. Yeah. So many examples like that. Krishna save us. Yes.
When Akasura came, they were in the poison.
When
all
what?
The Akasura, like all they were like from the poison thing at in the belly of the Akasura demon. They were
Yes.
all crying.
Yeah. Okay. So they have their set of vyabhichari bhavs, they have their sthai bhav, and they have their rasa, all these things combined together, and they play, and they're experiencing all these emotions and doing all these things and having all these feelings. So that's rasa. So it's nice to understand and see how their different ecstasies are combining, coming into play, manifesting in so many beautiful ways. And so if we understand this a little bit, we'll understand the level of love and devotion and emotion that is being communicated here. It's not just some simple little story. So there's a great difference between the pastimes of Krishna and the pastimes of some ordinary person. And as devotees advance, we begin entering in more and more into these pastimes, experiencing our own feelings. It takes a long, long time to come to the point of being situated on the same platform. But devotional service is filled with emotion, and as we advance more and more, those emotions become spiritualized. And because we feel devotional service, we have emotional experiences in devotional service. Devamrita Swami talks about this in his book. Have you seen his book?
Yeah.
What's it called? The
Baba.
It's a nice book that it describes about it. It's very nice because we all want to feel emotions. And if we're just involved in Krishna consciousness on the intellectual platform, after a while, it'll get really dry. That's why they say philosophy without practice leads to dry speculation, and you wander off in other speculative pursuits. So we want to feel something. We want to feel Krishna consciousness. And when we do, when we have a heartfelt experience with the devotees, with our service, with the holy name, hearing and chanting or praying, when we have these heartfelt experiences, that's what really carries us and gives us the enthusiasm to continue on and become more and more involved and absorbed. So, as we enter in to this hearing, that's what we begin to experience, these emotions that they propel us to want to go further and further. into the process of Shravana. Any questions before we start reading? Comments?
This whole Venugita, is it just the 21st chapter?
Yeah, 21st. He decided to focus on the 21st chapter. He explains in the introduction also because he was just spontaneously attracted to it. And he said I think he said he had even heard the Venugita before he became a devotee. I seem to recall him saying something like that. I can confirm it. But usually if we absorb ourselves in that which we're most inspired to do, it's much easier and we can do it much better. So that's what he did. And as we see throughout the years, he's increasingly productive. Increasingly productive. So I think he's made good choices. So he's saying here, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 First, it should be considered that the soil, stones, and trees of celestial Vrindavan are fully conscious and possess an eternal relationship with Hari. However, such relationships are expressed through an exchange of pure love and can only be perceived by devotees whose eyes are similarly anointed. This is the eligibility of the gopis. We may further consider that the description of Srimad Bhagavatam is of Boma Vrindavan, that's Vrindavan on the earth, which incorporates the features of the spiritual realm projected onto the canvas of the material energy. In this way, the eternal associates of the Lord, eternal associates, the sadhakas, for those who are practicing, and the non-devotees, are simultaneously coexistent. This is in Boma Vrindavan, Vrindavan on the earth. As are the mundane and spiritual realms, coexisting. What appears as reality to the sadhaka is different from the reality of the siddha. The siddha is the perfected soul. The sadhaka, just like when we go to Vrindavan, we see something, and someone else might see something else. We have to have a certain qualification to go to Vrindavan. Otherwise, it would be very, very, very difficult for us. Because the gopis possess the qualification of unalloyed love, their descriptions are a factual narration of the interaction on the supernatural plane. So what they're seeing, that they're seeing on the supernatural plane or the spiritual plane. And it's factual, what they're seeing. Conversely, what a sadhaka or even non-devotee perceives in visiting Vraja is factual from their limited mundane viewpoint. What they're seeing is also factual from their perspective. Thus in Vrindavan, two realities of an apparently contradictory nature coexist. According to the consciousness of the observer, a corresponding vision will manifest. Thus the description of the gopis, and that's the gopis are describing here, they're, as we discussed last week, the gopis they're clustered together and they're conversing, feeling great separation, so they're conversing about Krishna as he's while he's in the forest. And this famous narration of the gopis' conversations. What happened there? I thought you turned your phone off, or woo. Okay. So they're describing, the gopis are describing. Thus the description of the gopis is what takes place beyond the range of mundane sensory perception. Although such Leela is invisible to a practitioner, it should be revered as authentic. In this way, the all-perfect words of Sukadeva Goswami, free of any contradiction or defect, now describe the cows and their calves. So this is what Sukadeva Goswami says. Okay, I'll read it. Gavascha Krishna Mukha Nirgata Venu Gita Piyusham Uttabita Karna Putai Pibantya Savasnutastanapaya Kavalasmatashtur Govindamatmani Darshashru Kala Sprishantya. Using their upraised ears as vessels, the cows are drinking the nectar of the flute song flowing out of Krishna's mouth. The calves, their mouths full of milk from their mother's moist nipples, stand still as they take Govinda within themselves through their tear-filled eyes, and embrace him within their hearts. So what are the calves doing?
Drinking their mother's milk.
They were drinking their mother's milk.
And they're listening to Krishna.
They were drinking their mother's milk. But what happened? They heard the flute song, and their mouths were full of milk. When they heard the flute song, they didn't even swallow the milk. They were so stunned, in ecstasy, hearing Krishna's flute. And they start crying. For the Vrajavasis, the cows are their sole means of livelihood. From his, how many cows did Nanda Maharaj have?
900.
Right. 900,000 cows, Nanda Maharaj obtains an unlimited ocean of milk, which provides his clan with their staple foodstuffs and the prime commodity for barter. In this way, the gopis have become incomparably rich, the gopas, their opulence dwarfing the heavenly kingdom of Indra. 900,000 cows. I'm not sure if it's explained later, but the cows that Krishna was herding were personally picked by Nanda Maharaj. And he gave them those cows specifically for Krishna, very special cows. Their names are they're divided into different categories. Just like I remember, one was Mridanga-mukhi. Yeah, mukhi or mukha. Mridanga-mukhi. Can you hold up the mridanga? That one. And point the small end at everybody.
Yeah, this side. Yes.
Have you ever seen a cow with a face that shape? Yes, right? Mridanga-mukhi. And I think there's one called Nishinga. No, Singhamukhi. Singhamukhi. Lion. So there are different colors, different shapes. They all had different names. And how would Krishna call the names of the cows? He would call them on his flute. He'd play a certain, that would be their name. translated into their name. Sri Krishna's pastime of herding cows is his eternal sport. Daily he indulges in play with his friends, kills the occasional demon, and meets the gopis in a secluded place. This is all while he's herding cows. He's a multitasker. Not only is he doing that, but he's also manifesting the whole material world in the heart of everybody. Talking about multitasking. Whoa. Although the details of his amusements vary, in principle, they are ever recurring and follow a transcendental routine. This is beautiful to envision. After rising in the early morning, now he's rising, but is he really waking up?
No.
Not really. He's actually out all night, right? The gopis, and he sneaks back just in time for Mother Yasoda to come in and wake him up, and he pretends. After rising in the early morning, lotus-eyed Sri Krishna will be attended by his servants who perform their scheduled services, like washing his lotus face. While Mother Yasoda fusses over him, a mustached coward man enters the room and says, "O Govinda, protector of the cows, O Pashupati Hari, the most qualified of cowherders fail to milk our restless cows, and the calves will not drink a drop of milk due to their sorrow." So why can't they milk the cows? And why aren't the cows drinking any milk?
Because the cows are sad. Because the cows are sad and sorrow.
They're sad and they refuse to give milk. And the calves refuse to drink any milk until Krishna comes. Your mothers are looking down the road with tear-filled eyes, licking their calves and filling the directions with their mooing. Restless and unhappy, they are unable to tolerate another moment without you. Just hear their pitiful cries. So what does Krishna do? Jumps right up. Immediately jumps to his feet, his camphor-like smile indicating his own happiness. That's an interesting way to put it. His camphor-like smile indicating his own happiness. What would you say about that? He's self-satisfied, right? I think that's what he's referring to here. Indicating his own, he's a happy person within himself, Atmarama. Accompanied by Balaram and Madhamangal, Balaram would stay with Krishna and Madhamangal would as well. Gopal hastens down the gold-paved road. The ankle bells on his feet jingling. How are they jingling? Anyone know? How would you describe how his ankle bells jingle? Sweetly. Okay, I'm going to ask you questions like this, so pay attention.
Like this?
Sort of, yeah. His intoxicating fragrance pervading all directions. As he approaches the vicinity of the Goshaula, so he goes down the hill where the Goshaula is. The anxious cows, aware of his arrival, low with exuberance, stamping their hooves and shaking their heads. When he enters the barn, along with Balaram, the curious demigods see Govinda like a black bee among the white lotus flowers, and Haladar like an Airavata elephant among the great boulders of Kailash. their faces turned upward, the cows low in chorus at his appearance. And Govinda returns their show of love with his transcendental
Flute. Song.
Includes the jingling of his sweet a flute playing.
Right. And Govinda returns their show of love with his transcendental
Smile.
Each cow perceives Sri Krishna to be looking at her alone. And at whatever distance they stand, each feels him to be by her side. Moving their rear legs, the mothers eagerly desire Sri Krishna to milk them, to scratch their heads, and to speak some affectionate words. Until they have this morning darshan, the cows of Raja will not be milked, nor feed their hungry calves. So great is their love for Govinda. Although the cows live in opulence excelling that of the greatest of demigods, without the comforting presence of Sri Krishna, they see their palatial barns as drab and void. Isn't that true? No matter how much wealth, opulence we have, if we're not Krishna conscious, there's no real meaning there. And a devotee knows that. A devotee comes to the point of not being so bewildered by sense gratification that he can be happy separately from Krishna, no matter how much opulence there is. Sometimes a devotee will leave Krishna consciousness and not be able to forget Krishna consciousness. So they try doubly hard. I've seen this. They try doubly hard to intoxicate themselves on the material energy. Until finally they give up. Come back. While their comfortable residential quarters have walls of crystal, roofs fashioned from jewels, roof beams hewn from emerald, tall pillars cast in gold, and many cornices carved of ruby, their greatest opulence is the loving glance of
His smile.
close.
Smile.
Gopal.
Gopal. Gopal means
Protector of cows.
protector of the cows, cowherd boy, friend of the cows. We just named the devotee he just got initiated in Buenos Aires. Gopal Govinda. I was going to call him Gopal Govinda Ram. But Gopal Govinda is such a sweet name. And he's a real cowherd boy. With his regular patronage and the tender care of Nanda's cowherd men, the cows and calves live there in great happiness. Surrounding the barns are innumerable cow pens, enclosed with decoratively carved fences festooned with flowering vines, strings of pearls, and cloth ribbons. Beyond them stretch the vast meadows of Vrindavan, like a multi-hued sea of green swaying gracefully in the gentle breeze from the Yamuna. Everywhere are scattered blue, gold, and pink flowers, and the occasional banyan tree towering against the turquoise sky provides ample shade for the grazing cows. And beyond the meadows is what? Forests of Vrindavan. The whole area is softened by scattered cow dung powder, which increases the sanctity of the charming atmosphere. At some places, there are heaps of cow dung as high as
Might go over there.
Who said mountains? Very good. We should keep score. These boys are laughing in ecstasy, so. At other places, cow dung patties are stacked like the many peaks of the Himalayas. Raise your hand. The magic bowls of Raja. Alright, so this is the bowls. You've seen big old bowls in Vrindavan or Govardhan? Beautiful. The majestic bowls of Raja wander here and there like liberated souls, sometimes fighting each other for cows, sometimes peacefully grazing on grass, but at all times absorbed in thoughts of
Krishna. Gopal. Govinda.
Who said Govinda? Alright. While singing the glories of Sri Krishna, innumerable young gopis collect cow dung, and elderly gopis sit in circles making them into large patties. Their songs and laughter settle like a nectarian dew on the pasture and saturate the grass with an ever sweeter taste. Wow. So what saturates the grass with an ever sweeter taste?
Cow dung patties.
Milk.
No. The songs and laughter. So if you want the prasadam to taste very nice, just keep laughing and singing. Their songs and laughter settle like a nectarian dew on the pasture and saturate the grass with an ever sweeter taste. Many wealthy Vrajavasis walk here and there, dressed in fine silks, decorative turbans, and golden ornaments. They speak among themselves of the heroic deeds of Hari and glorify the good fortune of the king and queen of Raja. They say, "What pious deeds did Nanda Baba and Yasoda Devi perform to be blessed with such a son?" Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes Sri Hari's departure with the cows in this way. So picture it in your mind. The barns appear like multicolored lakes of Kubera's domain, and the rows of white clouds are like the many rivers that descend from the heavenly realm. Their flowing milk, I should say rows of white cows, but their flowing milk is like the water in those rivers. And the cowherd men trying to stop the calves from going are the fishes in that river. The milk pots are like turtles, the faces of the gopis collecting cow dung like lotus flowers, the white and red calves like chakravaka birds, and the cows raise tails like moss in the river. Every time you laugh, the prasadam is going to taste sweeter and sweeter. When the cows start for the meadows, they are joined by black... What? I'll read that again. When the cows start for the meadows, they are joined by black...
Bulls.
Cats.
Clouds.
Bugs.
You have 15 seconds.
Bumblebee.
If you don't get it within 15 seconds, no holiday.
Bulls.
You're close.
Oxen.
Close.
Cows.
Buffalo.
Sheep.
In ecstasy, he said buffaloes, laughing ecstasy. When the cows start for the meadows, they are joined by black buffaloes, and the meeting resembles the confluence of the Triveni. The white cows appear like the Ganga, and the black buffaloes like the river Yamuna. As they gracefully walk out of Nandagram, it says Nandagoam. Nandagoam. Is that the same as Nandagram?
Gaon is
It's just the
village.
way to pronounce it.
Gaon in Hindi is village.
That's the way you pronounce it.
Nandagaon.
Gaon.
It's like,
In India, you pronounce it.
yeah, in North India.
Gaon means village.
North India.
It's like very
All
much
right, let's say it. That's what it says. As they gracefully walk out of
Nandagal.
Nandagal.
Nandagal. The animals create billowing golden clouds with the dust from their Brahma, Indra, and Shiva consider themselves blessed to receive this powder. For like the waters of the celestial Ganga, its touch purifies their intelligence and senses. Here it says, the cows that accompany Sri Krishna have been selected personally by the king of Raja. Aware of their good fortune, Gopal's cows walk with their heads up, tails erect, smiling in all directions, and casting happy glances at all. Why are they so happy? Because they were Krishna. When the cows walk over the fields of Vrindavan, their hooves split the old grass. But when lotus-eyed Hari again touches the soil, it shivers in ecstasy and manifests fresh sprouts. The cows walk before, behind, and on both sides of Krishna Balaram, lovingly gazing upon their handsome faces as the boys joke, play, and laugh in abandon. Although Mother Yasoda fears the cows may step on her son's delicate feet, such things are not possible. The cows and bulls of Vrindavan consider every breath of Govinda more precious than millions of their lives. And loving him with all their hearts, they care for his welfare like a mother. So the cows are very, very conscious of Krishna's welfare, like a mother. Although anxious for the fresh grasses of Govardhan Hill and intoxicated by Sri Krishna's youthful presence, they are conscious of every step they take. They could never be so careless as to allow a mishap. For them, the words of Raja's queen are impelled by a maternal love that is held in the highest esteem by all inhabitants of Vrindavan. So the cows were so happy to be with Krishna. At the same time, they had a perfect mood of service. Not just enjoying his company, but also watching out for Krishna, being very careful that Krishna is not harmed in any way. I'm sorry, but that reminded me of something that happened when I was walking with Srila Prabhupada. I felt very, just like the cows here, I felt very fortunate to be chosen to go on a walk with Prabhupada. This was in Los Angeles. This is 1973. And I was a grihasta at the time. And so there were about 25 devotees on the walk. Most of them sannyasis and older devotees. So I was like one of the last ones in the pecking order. So I couldn't get close to Srila Prabhupada. I was all the way at the end. I was like, how am I going to do this? I want to hear what Prabhupada's saying. I want to be next to Prabhupada. So I was examining the whole situation. I saw that right in the back of Prabhupada, nobody was there. So quickly I got right in back of Prabhupada. And just listening to all the nectar, like that. And all of a sudden, I did what the cows would never even think of doing.
What?
I stepped on the back of Prabhupada's foot. Not only that, but what happens if someone steps on the back of your foot?
You trip.
Well, Prabhupada didn't trip, but his shoe came off. And it wasn't so funny. Prabhupada didn't even look at me, he just looked back and went, walked further back. So I have a lot to learn from the cows of Vrindavan. I was enjoying, at least I wasn't enjoying material sense gratification. It was spiritual sense gratification. but it wasn't with the service attitude necessary. And so I was negligent. I learned a lot from that. So I was reminded, obviously. Walking serenely with full udders, they simply float along the fields of Vraja like wondrous clouds of love. It's a nice metaphor. Cows, what are they doing? They're floating along the fields of Vraja like wondrous clouds of love. Their affectionate mooing like a low, resonant thunder, and the movement of their tails like flashing lightning. Carried by the ever-swelling tide of his loving pastimes, which are decorated by the lotus flowers of his playful associates. Sri Krishna and his herd passed the lush meadows alongside the Yamuna, under the canopy of many tamal, kadamba, mango, bilva, and ashwata trees. When they arrive at Govardhan Hill, the cows feast from the fresh grasses and nectarian waters, while the cowherd boys amuse themselves in the wonderful mountainside playground. So they walked through the meadow, came down from the hill, all the barns, the Goshala, go out through the meadows, and they go to the forest of Vrindavan, Govardhan Hill. And they have so many transcendental pastimes. And back in the village, everybody's in great anxiety, feeling such separation. Just like the cows, when they weren't with Krishna, feeling such great separation. And cowherd boys also. And now everyone who's not with Krishna is great separation. And there's a few hundred more pages to this book. So
Are we going to read all of it?
that's what I was going to ask all of you if you wanted to. I already read it, but that doesn't mean anything. Just like you asked someone if they would like a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and they said, "Oh, I already read it." So this is ever fresh and increasing in ecstasy. Like we read this, when was it? During the week we read this, right? But this is a completely new experience now, is it?
Yeah, every time.
So it's getting a little late. We can have some kirtan, or if anyone wants to make a comment or ask a question about anything we talked about before the reading, or anything we read about. Yes.
I was wondering if there's a description of the cows when they move. We understand it's a move, but do we ever hear a deeper meaning, like it's some sort of a different transcendental experience when a cow is moving?
Or what they're saying?
Yeah. Do you ever get any description?
It probably does.
Okay.
Probably does. We just have to keep reading
Okay.
and hear. So I have to remember that. I don't have such a good memory. The cows are floating across the meadow like
Cloud.
Clouds of love.
clouds of what?
Love.
Clouds of love. Float. Well, let me read that again just to be sure. I'll have to look at it. I'll have to find it again. I lost the place. Wow. So much nectar. Yeah. And then every once in a while there's a nice pastime. We didn't get to a particular pastime. We just read descriptions. We get to a particular pastime. But this Venu Gita is filled with beautiful pastimes. Filled, like we read last week. Okay. thank you very much. Thanks for listening and contributing, kids. Very good. And we'll continue, yes. Oh. After the kirtan.
Today is Pushkar Abhishek ceremony,
Oh.
Krishna's. So Prabhuji has, if you have time, he wants to celebrate the Pushkar Abhishek of Krishna. He has Shri Radha Vanshi, the deities.
I have time.
Okay.
You will. Time is next.